Hey guys, welcome back to James King. Today we're going to be doing our final election prediction as promised. Before we get into it, hit that like button, subscribe. I'm going to be doing early voting as well as election day coverage. As you can see, our map here, I've got everything grayed out that I think is available to go one way or the other. As you can see, you've got the map the way that it is with the electoral votes. Everything that's already blocked in, I believe, is settled. I believe that's not going to go one way or the other. It's going to go the way it's predicted to go. Now let's get into some of these polls. I'm going to start with Ohio. I'm start with some of the more Republican-leaning states. Ohio, and I'm using 538. The average of polls currently has Trump up 1.6 at 48% to 46.4%. All right, so I am going to give Ohio to Trump. And some of these are a combination of like my opinion is also that Ohio will go to Trump, but that happens to coincide with the polls. That will not always be the case. Iowa, I'm moving to next. Technically, Biden's up 1.3, 47.5 to 46.2. This is a case in which I am still actually going to go red with Iowa, and that's based on voting history, and that's also based on my gut feeling. It's a very close. 1.6 is within the margin of error. Certainly, within most of these polls, you don't have many polls with any huge leads, and I think Trump is going to edge out a victory in that state. Now, moving down to Georgia, this is an interesting state. Okay, because if you look at the polls, technically, as of October 27th, Biden's 48.1 to 46.9. That's a 1.2 lead for Biden. And, if you take a look down here, you can see, look, electoral votes. Look at the recent presidential elections here. Okay? Republicans have edged it out every time. Georgia will go blue at some point. There will be an election that surprises everybody. I don't think it's this one. I'm giving it to the Republicans, and we're moving along. All right? Let's see what we got next here. Florida. Florida's interesting this year especially. Okay, so if you look at, based on October 26th, the most recent average of polls on 538, it's 49.2 Biden, 46.9 Trump. That's a 2.3% lead for Biden. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, some of these states I do have money on and predict it. However, that is completely irrelevant to my prediction here. Just for fun, I put $100 on Biden winning Florida. To tell you my level of confidence with that, I am actually going to give Florida to Trump. The justification for that is really, I don't have one. It's a gut feeling. Some of the work that was done, the fact that felons can now vote in Florida, freed up a demographic for Democrats, but Latino voting or Latino voters across the whole country, and Florida included, have been trending toward Republicans this election. Democrats have not done much, if anything, outside of what was done by maybe like Bernie Sanders in the primaries, to really cater to their own so-called constituents. And when you don't do that, the other party can get them. So it really may come down to Latino voters and voter turnout. Republicans vote. They vote on election day. We will see. Florida's going to be interesting, though, because they are actually allowed to count their mail-in and early ballots ahead of time. So Florida may be the state, if Biden wins, you might know on election night by 9 p.m. Because if Biden wins Florida, it's over. It's donezo. Now, I'm not predicting that, though. I'm predicting that Florida goes to the Republicans. All right, moving along. All right, North Carolina. Average of polls, 538. Biden plus 2. That's 49.1 to 47.1. Now, I've been torn about this, and I haven't. Let's see. What do we got? I don't know. How do I feel about this? North Carolina. So if we go back in the polling, it was only 1 point back April 13th, it looks like, where Trump and Biden were even tied. Ever since then, Biden has been up. You know what? I'm going to give it to the Democrats. We will see if I'm correct. I probably will make a video as to whether I was correct or not. But, you know, there'd be mud on my face if I'm wrong. But I'm going on a branch. I'm going to say the polls are basically right with this. 2 points. 2 points is something I would consider standard for a margin of error with any average of polls. We certainly saw that in 2016. But I'm going to go out on a branch and say North Carolina goes blue. All right. Maine's 2nd district. All right. So Biden is up 2.1 in Maine's 2nd district. You can already see that Maine's 1st district is already blued out because he has a ridiculous lead in that district. So I'm going to go ahead and give, that's actually, I believe that's the whole state of Maine is going blue this election. And there's really not much to say about that other than, like I said, it's a 2.1 lead. The state is divided kind of awkwardly with its districts, but at the end of the day, it's a gut feeling. Minnesota. Now we're getting less into gut feelings. All right, Minnesota. If we look at the polls here, 9.1. Okay, now Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan are interesting states, especially this election. Trump has to win one of them, and he's losing all of them. Now, that's just based on polling. I've seen some interesting numbers from in-person voter turnout in some of these states. That being said, currently, as of October 6th, you've got an 8.1 lead. Biden 50.7 to Trump 42.7. Even if polls were as wrong as they were in 2016, it would not even be close. So I am going to give that to the Democrats. Moving along, we've got Wisconsin polls. We got what we got here: 7.1 for Biden, 51.4 to 44.3. I'm going to give that to the Democrats as well, only because this is one that I'm actually more iffy about. But the reason I'm giving it to Biden is because the effect of the first debate, as well as most recent polling, you know, he's gone from 50.3 to 51.4. Trump's actually going up in the state as well. However, Biden has expanded his lead a bit by almost a point, a little less than a point in the past couple of days. Now, of course, that could go the other way, but the way things are trending, it's got to be blue. Michigan. As you can see, even though I am doing, you know, a lot of gut feelings here, I am basing it off the polls. All right. Michigan. All right, we got Biden 8.3, average of polls 538. Biden 50.9 to Trump 42.5. Michigan's going blue. Okay. Like, I understand people say, well, the polls are wrong in 2016. The polls are wrong an average of 2.1%, roundabout there. The polls are not going to be wrong 9 points. Not saying it can't happen, but even in 2020, and 2020 is the election in which it could happen. Don't get me wrong. If everything, you know, I'd have egg on my face, but at the end of the day, yeah. To be fair, though, I still don't think the polls are going to be 8.5%, 9% wrong in states like Michigan. You know, Hillary Clinton made the mistake of not campaigning in these northern states. That is not to say she shouldn't have won them. It's just she didn't try. That's what happens when you take it for granted. The Democratic Party is not doing that this election. They put in the work, they put in the time, and they're 7, 8, 9 points up in the polls in every one of these states. Like I said, Trump has to win one of these, and he's not even close in any of them. All right, so moving along. After Michigan, we've got New Hampshire. All right, New Hampshire, another interesting case, highly debated. This is fascinating to me because September 26th, 27th, 28th, polls start to split. It goes from 6.8 for Biden to 9.4. His lead currently is 11.2, 53.6 to 42.4. This is the average of 538 polls again. This is not, the polls are not going to be 11.5% wrong. It's not hard for me to guess that Biden is going to win in New Hampshire. Okay? It's not, come back and tell me I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm going to be on something like that. Like I said, the polls might be wrong, but they're not going to be wrong 11.5%. I'm not trying to over justify it. It's just, most of the comments I get is people saying, oh, why do you believe New Hampshire is going to be blue? You have the ability to look at these polls just as much as I do. And you can look at polls, Rasmussen or whoever that is more aligned is going to get polls that are more slanted the opposite direction. I'm an independent. I'm not a Democrat. But if you are conservative or Republican, if you look at polls that tend your direction, and yeah, they're a little closer, but your guy's still losing by 7, 8, 9 points, even in Fox News polls in some of these states. So be what it is, be what it may be, he's not going to, at the end of the day, he's not going to lose New Hampshire. That I promise you. Pennsylvania, highly contested. Polls started to spread out a little bit early mid-October. They've started to come back a little bit. So from mid-October, you're looking at like 7.3 down to like 5.1. A little bit of tightening in the polls. That's typical, and I'm actually not surprised in a state like Pennsylvania. That being said, October, 26th here, October 27th, 5.3, slight uptick from yesterday, 50.2 to 44.9 in the 538 average of polls. Despite what happened in 2016, I am going to give this to the Democrats. Trump has never been leading this election cycle in polls in Pennsylvania. And while that might not seem incredibly relevant, the massive anti-Trump vote, a lot of people aren't excited about Biden, but that isn't going to matter if they're motivated to vote against Trump. And like I said, everyone has their opinions. I've got plenty of problems with both candidates, but at the end of the day, I'm just looking at polls. And what the polls are telling me is Biden's going to win. And so Pennsylvania's an interesting state because Hillary was up, don't quote me on this, but I think she was up, like 2.1, and Trump won by like 0.7 or something like that. So the polls were like just over 2% wrong, or like 3% wrong. So imagine the same scenario. The polls are 3% wrong. Biden still wins by 2.7, almost 3%. And it may be the case. That may be the case. But if they were just as wrong in Pennsylvania as they were in 2016, Biden still wins. And that's just me making a judgment as someone who's looking at the polls. All right, moving along. We've got Virginia. So the polls have kind of spread out in Virginia. October 26th, Biden 11.4, 52.6 to 41.2. Not much of a contest. It's going blue. All right. Arizona. A lot tighter of a race. Trump has actually been up at one point back in March, early March. Today, October 27th, you're looking at 3 points flat, 48.8 to 45.8. I don't know. What if I'm not mistaken, Trump won Arizona last election. This is one of those states where I am making a judgment call. It is somewhat based on the polls. It's based on the amount of money and time Democrats put into Arizona in the primaries. It's about the Latino outreach Bernie did in the primaries. It's about the amount of time Kamala and Biden are spending in Arizona. I think they clutch it, but I don't think it'll be 3%. I think this will be a razor thin margin. Now, whether or not that's true, who knows? But I do think the Democrats take Arizona, and it's been quite a while, if I'm not mistaken, since they have taken Arizona. All right, so you see the map is done now. Now, I don't have to look at the numbers up top to know that this is a big win for Democrats. It seems to me, before I look at the final numbers, it's going to be a big win for Democrats. But the thing about that is that I'm just going off the polls, okay? Some of you may disagree, and that's totally okay. But the polls are telling me one thing, and based on 2016's data, you know, if you correct for that, the polls are still telling me the same thing. So, you know, we shall see. I may be wrong. Like I said, as an independent, doesn't really matter to me if I'm wrong. But I will do a video on how wrong I was. So let's check it out. 308 to 230. Actually closer than I would have thought. If I'm not, isn't that close to the 2016 numbers? Yeah, so that would be, yeah, that's actually, yeah, closer than I thought. But yeah, now that being said, you know, he picks up a state that just on a crazy swing won't change it that much. Pennsylvania, you know, Biden wins on election night. You got a blowout. That's a landslide. I just don't. I don't want to ramble. I don't want to get into hypotheticals too much. This is an election prediction after all. This would be a good time if you'd like to like and to subscribe. You want to come back when I drop that last video and tell me if I was wrong or right. Now, I'm not going to be right about every state. The likelihood of that, you know, who knows? Technically, I went against the polls in a couple of these, though every time I went against the polls, it happened to be in Trump's favor. I believe. I could be mistaken, but I think that that's how it worked out. We will see. We will see. I think that getting onto it, like an aside, the Senate is going to be fascinating. I need to do a video on that, but we shall see. Like, subscribe, stay safe. Got another video coming out real soon. Thanks, guys.